Good evening. I apologize, I'm doing double duty here. I'm going to call to order a regular meeting of the Wellington Board of Selectmen. It is Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. I will ask you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to start with an item of old business. There is no action. It is information purposes. As you know, we had a vacancy on the Board of Selectmen, and this board had 30 days to fill that vacancy. We failed to do so. So therefore, by statute, the elected town officers were notified today by the town clerk as to our responsibility to fill the vacancy within 60 days of the December 1st, 2022 resignation of Selectwoman Boris. The elected town officers of the same party as Ms. Boris are myself and Christine Sathis, the Democratic Registrar of Voters. Because this is a critical role and the Board of Selectmen has a responsibility to continue our duties, we felt it was important to not delay the appointment. So today, Ms. Sathis and I informed the town clerk of our decision of appointment. We have appointed Mike McCoo to fill the vacancy of Selectman effective January 3rd, 2023 until November 21st, 2023. Additionally, Mr. McCoo appeared before the town clerk and resigned his position on the Board of Finance, so on CIP and the School Building Committee, where his appointments were a result of his seat on the Board of Finance. He was then sworn in as a newly appointed selectman and is now seated for tonight's meeting. I want to thank Mike for his willingness to serve in this capacity and welcome his voice at the table. If either of you like to comment, I believe, I know you received a communication, you should have received communications from the town clerk. She sent them this afternoon to both Jim, to you, myself, and to Kelsey into the office of the appointment and resignations.
I did receive that communication from the town clerk, but she also says he needs to be sworn in prior to being seated. So
Correct.
I assume that happened.
That happened after.
It wasn't
After the
it wasn't
writing
in the
of
letter.
the,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, she did not write the letter, but she did upon accepting the communication of appointment and the resignation, swear him in and documented that as well. So if you have any questions, that is available in her office. All right, so I'm going to jump right into our next item, which is approval of minutes. You should have in your packet minutes from the December 19th regular meeting. Just for clarification, Kelsey is joining us online, but she does not have the ability to speak on camera. Right, so, okay. So I will make a motion to approve the minutes of December 19th as presented.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Jim. Any discussion? I will do a roll call vote. Jim?
Aye.
Mike?
I'll abstain.
I vote aye. The motion carries. I anticipated that. Must be vote. All right, present to speak. For those in the room and online, if you would like to speak, I ask you to raise your hand. If you're online, you can unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and limit yourself to 2 minutes. I will start in the room. Is there anyone present to speak? They're nodding their heads, that they are very anxious to speak, but they're gonna remain quiet. Anyone online wish to speak? All right, you're all pretty quiet too. You have an opportunity at the end of the meeting if you so choose. Correspondence, there's a list of correspondence, and they are all available in the selectman's office. Have any questions? Going to move right along to the status report. The steep grant, which is for the septic system at the old town hall. There's nothing new to update on we're still waiting on the topographic study survey that needs to be completed. Troy, you have something new?
It was surveyed on Thursday.
Oh, great. Okay. So that's our new news. Troy was on vacation last week, so we will move forward with the results of that. And then the next step will be to prepare an RFP to go out to bid. So the school building committee is continuing to hold public outreach sessions. The next one is set for this Thursday, the 5th at 6:30 here in this room at the town office building. A mailer went out to all Wellington households to share information on the committee's work, as well as meeting dates. That gave multiple ways to get the information from the commission, which is on via their website. It also included multiple meeting dates, a link to a survey, and the email of the SBC, which I think is important for folks to be able to reach out to us. And if anyone needs a paper copy of the survey, they are available here at the town office building at various offices, at the library and at the senior center. And all of those places have collection boxes as well. So the committee is still working on mill rate impact of a 20-year bond. That information came in today from our financial advisor. I anticipate that will be, discussed at our next meeting, which is tomorrow at 6:30. The lot SIP project, which is the sidewalk project from Hall School to the mills. I have nothing new. We are still waiting for the CROG review on that project. The truck lease is on tonight's agenda to discuss. ARPA Commission, a public hearing will be held here in the town office building on Monday, the 9th of January at 7 p.m. There will be 11 items to be discussed during that public hearing. 5 of those are from the library. It also includes requests from the Board of Education, Economic Development Commission, and the Senior Center. To encourage folks to come out and voice their thoughts on the various
Date and everything,
projects.
I'm sorry.
Monday, January 9th at
Thank
7 p.m. As far as town staff, we still have one unfilled position, and that is the assistant revenue collector. We have yet to get a qualified candidate. And so the position remains open. So if anyone is interested, they can reach out to the Selectmen's office. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Mike may have many, but maybe not tonight. Okay. Public Works. Troy, you're up. We'll start with your general
All right.
report.
They did some tree cleanup from the storm that we had last week. Roadside mowing is still going on around town. They cleaned the shop up, they washed the trucks, they finished looming the edges of Moose Meadow. We stopped the other day when we last said it with the heavy rain. So they finished last week and everything is all loomed. We'll just have to seed it in the springtime, but all the curb is backed up and everything. They fueled the generators last week for that storm we were gonna have, made sure everything was all set down at the senior center and Hall School. They've been cleaning out catch basins, they patched holes around town. The other day they did some spot sanding, they had some water running on the road, so they did some spot sanding. And we fixed a few gravel roads that had some major potholes in them. Unfortunately, we can't really grade right now, so we ended up just putting some process back in for the time being, so. That's it.
Okay. All right, then next item is the status of the Public Works Director vehicle. So I'll start with some general information and then I'll try to comment on our options. So Jim, as you're aware, Mike is, I believe you know, our order for a 2022 F-350 that was ordered with a plow that was ordered in June of 2021 has been canceled from Ford. And so we're looking at what we can do moving forward. So after further discussions with our business manager, we all felt what was critical was we needed to hear from information regarding the lease. And last time we spoke, we had reached out, we hadn't heard from them. I spoke to them late this afternoon, and they basically shared with us that we do have options on adjusting the lease. This is unusual, but they've certainly seen it happen a couple of times, especially here recently. If we change the equipment choice, what we'll need to do is go back and get approvals from the bank for whatever equipment we do based on new specs. So that is possible. And they didn't think it would be very difficult to get new approvals, but it is a step we have to take. Typically, there's a penalty for not taking the amount of principal as originally agreed to. So if our replacement was less than we had originally budgeted for, there could potentially be a penalty for that. The agent suggested that we go to the bank for a waiver, and they would work to do that on our behalf, especially based on the unusual circumstances. So with that said, we know we have an option to still utilize the funds that we secured the lease for, making some adjustments. What we need to do is take a look at our process. So the CIP plan is what had this item in it, and that includes several approvals. So the plan had a purchase of a vehicle, specifically a truck with a plow. Replacing exactly what was in place is not something we have been successful with. We're certainly not going to go out there and get a brand new fleet vehicle for the same cost. This was eventually voted on at a town meeting because it was part of the CIP plan that CIP brought to the Board of Selectmen. I believe it would make most sense with any change to go through all of those steps and approvals. That would include Board of Selectmen approval, a recommendation to the Board of Finance, a Board of Finance appropriation and recommendation for the calling of a town meeting, and then finally for the Board of Selectmen to call a town meeting. All of that would then culminate in a town meeting and hopefully a successful appropriation of funds. After all of that is completed and again successful, we can move forward with a new purchase.
Next question.
And now discussion. Yes,
Okay.
you may.
So, first of all, on that last part, I'm sure Troy's glad to hear that because I know how much he loves the bureaucratic process
Yeah.
to make a capital expense.
Yeah.
However, going backwards from that one, you said that the lease, the people who, the lender,
Mhm.
sorry, would have to approve a change in the type or the brand or whatever. So in other words, if we found, if we had to change to an SUV, is that a change they need to approve?
Any change, so anything
Okay.
other, we go to they went out to the banks
Right.
with a specific set of specifications. This is the equipment they're going to purchase that you're gonna borrow against. That doesn't exist, so anything we purchase now, whether it be a different truck, a gas truck, a used truck, would be different specifications, so we go back to the bank for approval.
So even changing from diesel to gas would
Yes.
have to go back to approval. Okay.
I believe so.
So the reason I'm asking
Yes.
that question is I just happened, because it was the end of the year and even in this crazy market, the dealers are trying to sell a lot at the end of the year like they always do. And I was looking at family vehicles this past week and the Chevrolet dealers are starting to get stock all of a sudden. They're
Yeah.
getting 22s and 23s coming in together. And some of them they're surprised at. It's just coming.
Yeah,
And a lot of the Connecticut Chevy dealers have 3,500 Chevy four-wheel drive trucks coming in. Not many diesels, mostly gas, but they are coming in, they're on the lot, they're available. I checked again tonight before we came up here. There are gas 1-ton Chevy four-wheel drive trucks in Connecticut, including at dealers like Northwest Hills, which is on the state bid list. Or something that you must
Yeah.
have that's on the
Yeah.
state bid list also. I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
that's close enough that we don't have to go back through this whole process.
Yeah, so listen, we could go back to them and ask. I know when trying to sit down with Donna, and I think we all agreed that we made a very specific, I mean, we had to give them the specifications of
Sure.
the truck that we were purchasing. So I would defer to them, working with Donna as to whether that triggered going back through. I think the reality is it's a different price. So anything we get is gonna be a different price.
Yep.
I think no one loves having to stall and go through that process, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's right to go through all these steps because that a specific expense, just over $49,000 was what was approved at town meeting.
And that's, I want to re-emphasize that point. The
Yeah,
townspeople
The
said,
the town meeting
we
decided.
want $49,000 for a pickup truck with a plow. Now,
Yeah.
you can go before them and say, we got that canceled. Well, bring it through the process
Yes.
again. It's not gonna be a quick, I doubt it's gonna be a long Board of Finance discussion. But go
Right.
back around it again and go bring it before the people say, well, we couldn't get the $49,000 diesel plow truck. It just isn't gonna happen. But
Right.
we got gasoline options, we got GM, I was gonna
Right.
ask
Yep.
about that.
Well,
because
I think at the
as
end
I
of the day,
noticed the pickup truck in front of the animal shelter there.
Right.
we need to pick we need to decide and we need to bring that forward. So it's not, I don't think, we don't need to take multiple options. So the process was that CIP, who's, recommends to us, they're an advisory commission to the Board of Selectmen, and then we adopt the CIP plan.
Yeah.
So we have a responsibility to take all the information we're looking at and decide what we want to move forward with, knowing that we have options, and then we can ask those specific questions once we have chosen a vehicle. So with that, there are multiple things, Mike. Nothing is off the table. I think Troy would agree with you. We're looking at any option we can to be fiscally responsible and get what we need in here. With that, I think last time we talked, Jim, we brought not just a couple of trucks, which were extremely expensive, but Ford Explorer. And again, that was a model you or I might go out and purchase. So this was one that had the least, I'll call them bells and whistles, but it was, it would do the job. And so Troy had spoke up to us about what he thought he would need, if not a pickup truck. So then I asked, what about a Chevy Tahoe, similar to an Explorer, knowing that the fire department had just gone out to purchase one. So we reached out
And
to
found there was potentially
Northwest
some
Hills.
stock.
They still had, at the time, now this was a couple of weeks ago, just before Christmas, I believe, they still had a couple of vehicles in their order, on order, that were not spoken for yet. So I don't know if that's the case today. And they had given us a price on one that's 39,000, 39,571.60. So that is another option for us. All of these vehicles move us into needing gas or fuel. Sorry, I want to make sure I get everybody here into the waiting room. Okay. They all lead us to gas options, and we just, Troy doesn't have the budget for gas. I would hope not using diesel in his truck would leave some dollars in his diesel budget to be able to budget for gas.
Sounds very reasonable.
At $2 a
One-
gallon cheaper.
One would expect, right? But you're going to use more gas than you are diesel, especially in a truck. In one of these smaller SUVs, but adequate enough for him to be on the roads in all weather, that I think he would get better gas mileage. And I feel confident that it's a vehicle that could be on the road in different types of weather. And Troy, please jump in and speak to this, because our fire departments are using similar vehicles. And they are out there no matter what the weather is to assist. They're often out there to assist us during storm for different things. And if necessary, Troy would get in a piece of equipment at Public Works in order to assist. So I think we have various options. One is much less. If this is still available, we're talking about $10,000 less than we had originally borrowed. That would put us into the penalty category. And again, we asked Donna to work on our behalf to help advocate with the leasing company to avoid some of that penalty. Certainly, these are unusual circumstances, which if we could avoid, we would. It's, the cost of some of these, Mike, and I'm not sure how many made it back to Board of Finance after. Once we put a plow on, one from Putnam Ford was 66,000. We were looking at 66,000 at Monaco Ford before the plow, and the plow was gonna be about 9,500 there. We did find one place that had it was a fleet.
Yeah.
They were gonna give us the fleet price at Ray Seraphin with the plow, but it was
The V plow.
V-plow was 54,000. So those are all over what we had asked for. So we would then need to come up with the additional funds, again, needing to trigger that, in my mind, that approval at town meeting. So I still think those are all things we should go through. Enfield Family Ford with a straight plow was 68,000.
So I think if you follow the process, right, just sending it to the Board
Yeah.
of Finance and then calling the town meeting, then you have something you can go to your leasing company and say, look, we follow our process. This is what happens,
Yes,
And it's very consistent, and I think that should give them some level
Right.
of comfort.
And I did talk to Donna about the abilities to give them some money to hold a vehicle so that we could get through this process. And if that, was an option, and she said it was certainly doable.
That's something I'm worried about, because
Me
in
too.
this difficulty of working to find the right vehicle, because stock is limited, then that vehicle goes,
Mhm.
while we're going through this lengthy bureaucratic process, which I think is important.
Yes.
As a recent member of the Board of Finance earlier today, I think it's really important to do the process right and have the townspeople involved wherever they need to be. My question really was, are there things that fit within what was approved already that we can do?
One.
And that's the challenge, because that can make the process faster and
Yes.
allow Troy to find something and actually get his hooks in it before it goes to somebody else.
Yeah, the Explorer was about $2,000 more. And then the Chevy Tahoe was well under about $10,000.
The advantage of the Tahoe is because it's not in yet, there's more chance that we can make a commitment to the dealer and get them to hold it
Yes,
while we do our process,
That's
because it
correct.
hasn't arrived yet anyway.
Whereas the other ones, I think, were already on a lot, right?
they were on the lot.
So
There
they
are a
might not
lot
even-
incoming too.
Might not
if you
even
look.
be there right now.
No.
I know the one at Monaco Ford is gone.
The truck.
The truck.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So, and we knew this going in, right? But, once we start a process, we could, work with a dealer to see what it would take to have them at least hold while we, go through some of our process. And see if we could get the Board of Finance to, potentially move a meeting up before their regular meeting, if possible. But the first thing we have to do is, do we want to move forward with a purchase? And if so, then we need to take a look at the options that we have before us, and move on a vendor and specifications.
So we feel sure there isn't a way to do this without going back through the loop. There's nothing available that meets the spec.
I just know, because
Okay.
because they were, again, it was that truck, it was,
49,000.
but it was that vehicle. It wasn't like it was, we're gonna get a truck with a plow, will you give us money for it? It was, we had to provide them with the exact specifications that we
understood.
had approved. So.
I was just
yeah.
verifying that.
Yeah, and I think what's important is that we're still keeping in the tone of what the selectmen set forth to CIP, which at the end of the day was providing a vehicle for our public works director. And it's so, the conversation I had today with the folks at the leasing company, they're seeing it a lot as our fire chief sits in front of us with ambulance purchases, fire truck purchases.
Sure.
And I said, I think they're taking orders very differently now than they were in June of 21. I also think it's really important for people to hear, and for both of you to hear, we had a delivery date, we had a commitment date, and, Ford just couldn't honor that and continued to push that
Well, and
back.
they're still not allowing orders for 23s.
No, they cut
Chevy
that
is,
off.
but Ford is not right now.
Right,
at the
so
moment.
in June of 21, had we known any of this were even a possibility, we wouldn't have put this out with the rest of the lease. We would not have entered into a contract if we didn't really think we'd get it. We had future delivery dates on the other two vehicles and they came through. So there was nothing to lead us to believe this was a possibility. And our first concern was honoring the contract that we signed of that lease. So knowing that we do have some options to go back to the bank, it is beneficial, but
So I have one last question,
Yes.
not to complicate it, but since we're gonna go back through our approval process anyway, and possibly have to change some of the funding amount,
mhm,
does it revisit the conversation of what we purchase? Because Troy originally and the CIP originally approved a truck because it had multiple purposes,
Mhm.
right? It had the transportation thing that the SUV does, but also had the ability to be a backup for plowing. If he was out in a storm and he needed help, or if the fire department got on a call when he was out, he could run ahead and plow
mhm.
plow the fire department in to make access or something like that. Those are things talked about previously. If we're gonna have to go back and revisit all this, do we revisit the conversation of an SUV versus a truck? And,
Yes,
and
but I think that
obviously
happens
rely a
here.
lot on his input on that.
Yes, so I'll let him speak to that because, I mean, these suggestions, I want to be clear, came from Troy, and then we
Right.
worked together all of
Right.
the options. So, but I think, yes, we revisit that, but we revisit that. It doesn't need to go back to CIP. I think it comes here because CIP makes the recommendation
Right,
and then comes
It's
to
an
us.
advi- yeah.
yes.
So
it's an
we take a
advisory.
look and say, you know, let's weigh what this looks like in an SUV versus a truck. So Troy, you want to talk to us about?
That basic, I mean, the truck, they both have their pros and they both have their, you know, their cons. I mean, that's it. I mean, the truck, sure, Mike, you brought up valid points with it. And then there's points with the SUV, cheaper price, there's less, you know, there's a whole bunch of different things. For what I do, we do have spare vehicles. Yeah.
Has there ever been a conversation about that?
So, I mean, this is where something would happen if the SUV was purchased or voted on, that, you know, there is a spare at 450, there is a spare, you know, with that. So there's multiple different things. I mean, you know, we have the skid steer now, we put a plow on that, so we could do parking lots with that. Besides the pickup, there's multiple different, you know, things.
So you're still okay either way,
Either way,
and probably what ends up happening is what seems the most available and most likely to get through our leasing process is what we should go
I
with.
think that's the biggest thing. I think it's hard, you know, we can vote on a truck today, but then, you know,
Right.
we find it, if there's, by the time the process happens,
Right.
it could be however long that truck might not be available.
Right.
I've been told that from dealers too. I mean, that's, the gentleman from Racer from Ford calls me on a daily basis. I can't hold it much longer.
Yeah.
Then you have to do what you have to do. Where if we pre-order, you know, that one, like the fire department, you have more of a chance that the vehicle will come in and not, you know, or somebody will buy it. So those are the only options. It really doesn't, there isn't really a preference. It's-
And
It's good enough.
the current vehicle is a 2011, so we're at almost 12 years with it. And so I think it gives some real opportunity for us to have a solid informed decision when we go to replace that truck. When its time is due, and be able to weigh the benefits of a truck versus an SUV. And again, the benefit of this one from Northwest Hills would be that it's not a vehicle you purchase for your family, right? So
Right,
there's
it's a special
some
service
special
vehicle,
service
right,
vehicle, so-
rubber floors.
yeah, and so it has some pluses because Troy does often carry some things in the back of his vehicle
Sure.
and could still do that. And I think that's important. We talked about that. We were out on the road during that last storm and talked about, look, here's the things you have in here. Do you feel confident that you could still do this with this vehicle if we move forward? So, and certainly what's appealing is that it's under budget. And Troy had come to me before, maybe 2 years ago, and talked about whether or not another truck replacement was the right vehicle, and had mentioned an SUV, and we chose not to move forward with it. So here we are revisiting again for very different options, but his, you know, arguments for the fact that it could remain are still the same. And could be a beneficial vehicle. And Mike, I think I mentioned this at Board of Finance, so I'll make sure you hear it here at this table, is that some of the other discussion about moving this a little bit faster is that Troy's truck has some significant issues that will need to be dealt with. And so do we put another, you know, up to $7,000 of work into his vehicle? And so we're limping by without having to do that thus far. And then I think it's important to remember contractually, he's provided with the vehicle for a 24-hour response to us, which we try not to use too often, but it happens. So, okay. Jen?
So we take action.
We can take action. We can approve specs and then go from there and make a recommendation. So I'm gonna make a motion that we replace the current Public Work Director's vehicle with a new 2023 Chevy Tahoe SSV 4x4 from Sullivan's Northwest Hills in the amount of $39,571.60.
Pending any, do we have to do pending any?
No, we
approval,
do-
like the lease or
We
whatever?
do that
any
and
of
then we'll move forward.
Okay.
So they'll leave the
Second.
bank. So Mike seconded it for discussion.
Yeah.
We could send these specs to the bank and they said say no.
Right,
So then we can't move forward. So there's
Gotcha.
multiple steps along the line. Just
Yeah,
our
I was
approval
gonna say,
just approves the specs to move the process forward.
That just approved the specs to move it
That's it.
forward, and what are we doing? Board of Finance and then the bank, or the bank and then,
I think we'd start with going to the bank as we've approved specs
okay.
and then we go
And
to
then
them.
then we need to go Board of Finance. and
Yes,
town
in the
meeting.
meantime, I will send a communication to the Board of Finance so that we can move that discussion forward.
Okay.
And ask our business manager to reach out to the leasing company with these specs if we so approve those tonight.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any more discussion? All right.
Eric, can I say something?
Yes, Troy.
That 39,000 is there, I know that it's still within the budget, but the other truck came with lights, you know, like yellow amber lights for that, like, I don't know, speaking to that company, if they would do that or JNS would do that, so I don't know if that money is still, you know, or we're just purchasing it at that price, that's all, I just don't wanna, I mean, I
So
still
the
have.
question would be how you pick a price for the upfit. I mean, the upfit's probably a good question,
That's, yeah,
but how do you pick a
So
price?
let me share a little bit of information I had about that. We remember what was originally approved was a vehicle. We knew that it had to have lights, it was gonna get a radio, and that was all coming separately. That was not included in the overall cost before. We now have an opportunity where there's 39,000 and we've asked to borrow 49 and some change. So a difference. What they did, the leasing company did say to me is that, you know, you could always use the difference for another department. Or if there were other things such as lights and radios in your truck. And when I took that to Donna, the first thing we both agreed upon was we're not looking to lease something in another department and add something that's not how we do our purchasing. I think
Yeah,
that would
that's
be, I think
complicated.
that would be in bad faith, right? But do we include some additional cost for the things that would need to go into the vehicle, into the lease? And I'm not sure the appropriate steps to do that and where we put that, because it's not the specs for this vehicle. And where do we ask for that funding now?
Because you're not really getting a package, you're just getting the vehicle.
Correct,
Right, the fire department's gonna be going through the same thing. They're getting the vehicle and then they still have to do upfit of equipment and all that other
Correct.
stuff too.
the only difference there and with what we have right now is that we've got about $10,000 we're gonna be asking, so do we ask for less, you know, kind of a waiver, don't penalize us on taking 10,000 now penalize, you know, we're asked for a waiver and not penalizing us on taking 8,000 if it's about $2,000 worth of upgrades, or do we still move forward with the extras like we had planned? And can that additional appropriation come from the Board of Finance on our recommendation?
Or would this dealer add an upfit into the spec, a certain amount of dollars, not to exceed this amount for upfit into the spec?
right,
So then you would be buying it as the package.
as a package. That was, that's.
For, if I may, for a Tahoe, you're looking at the lights for that thing and a radio, $7,500 to $8,000. And yeah,
I mean.
Yeah, I mean, they may go a little less, they
Our
may go a little less than we do in the fire service,
well,
but.
remember, he's not putting a light bar in that
Right.
typically, so you're talking front and rear lights, it's
Oh,
Yeah.
no more light bar?
no more light bar, but he's front rear lights, yeah, you're still $5,000, easy.
And there's a lengthy delay for Whalen equipment too. 6 or 8 months on some of the lighting.
We got a nice magnet right on the roof.
Click it on and go.
Just like Kelly Savalas.
He looks a little like that.
Yeah.
Young coach.
He's just young enough to not know who we're talking about. To make y'all feel better. So the motion as it sits is the specs at this amount. I think if we're looking at asking them to include additional, then we need to go back to them and get a number and come back to the table. So. Thought,
I think your point about if we're gonna get penalized for going under the lease amount,
right,
that's money that we've lost.
right.
And
They
if it
did,
makes sense to, if we lose less by including some of this cost, which we're gonna spend anyway
Mhm.
in the lease and get less penalty, then that's less taxpayer money that's just lost to a penalty.
Correct, because although they feel good about us being able to get a waiver, they can't guarantee it. So, we, I can go back to them and ask them to work up
I
that number
asked
with
for the
some
waiver
lights.
for the price of that, whatever, what is that, 39,000? Ask for that. And if you're gonna need extra funding, but you can just.
I guess the thing is, if the answer is bad on the waiver, is we come back to this question and.
Right.
And we call Northwest
Make it
Hills and ask Northwest Hills if they'll add
In the mean-
$7,500 into it or
In
whatever.
the meantime, we'll
and-
ask about what it would cost to include, right? Here's our threshold. How can we
Right.
get us there?
I would ask them,
Right.
what does it cost rather than
Yeah.
that 7,500, yeah.
Yeah, they're not gonna, I'm gonna ask them if we added X and X, can you give us a cost on what that would be? So we can start with this and then move in a direction and,
Typically, dealers that sell vehicles for special service are accustomed to also having to add in equipment and add upfit costs. So as long as we can provide some clarity on what we're looking for, I'm sure they can add.
their quotes here are prepared for such items.
Yes. Yeah, just as if it was a pickup truck that they were adding a plow on, they would factor that. They would call their plow guy and say, or plow gal, or whatever their service is, and say, what is that plow gonna cost to install? They add it.
All right, any more discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right, we've exhausted that one. We're gonna move into tax refunds, my friends. All right, I'm going to move to refund Jacqueline M. Roberts an overpayment in the amount of $167.92.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Jim. Any discussion? Like, these are often hot topics of discussion.
Mhm.
All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
I did review them all. So.
I move to refund Margaret S. Icorn or Alvin A. Icorn an overpayment in the amount of $229.21.
Second.
Seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. And I move, maybe, to appoint David J. Meredith or Barbara J. Meredith an overpayment in the amount of $652.35.
Second.
Seconded by Jim. Any discussion?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right. Right. I will move on to appointments. Appointment of the school building committee. So I'll start with, I was appointed to the school building committee, filling the first selectman or his or her designee seat. As of this afternoon, I resigned from the school building committee as a regular member. The work of the school building committee is very important to the town as we work to address a matter that has been in discussions for over a decade. I have heard the concerns of conflict with the potential purchase of property, and it's important to me that I remove myself from any decision involving such an option. Up to this point, I've been silent on the property purchase, and abstained from any votes involving its potential use. Per state statute, the first selectman is a member ex officio of all boards and commissions. This would mean I can have a voice, but no longer have a vote on matters before the SBC. This leaves a vacancy that will need to be filled. I would continue to abstain from discussions in matters regarding the purchase of the property as it sits today. So I will make a motion to appoint Mike McCoo as the first selectman's designee as a regular member of the school building committee, effective immediately, expiring once the charge of the committee has been completed. Is there a second?
I'll second for purpose of discussion.
Second, any discussion? I'll just say that I think Mike's voice and input on the school building committee has been integral in getting us to this point we are at today, and keeping him as a member of that commission is beneficial to the town's people. Jim or Mike? Okay.
I'll just say thank you for the opportunity. I do think the work is critical, and it's important to me, as I represented the Board of Finance, previously, it's important to me to continue the concept that there needs to be due diligence and the process needs to be defendable. And that the townspeople need to know that that group is going to work for them to present them what they think is the best option, but then expect the townspeople to make the choice. And that's my goal. If this is approved, to stay with the school building committee to make sure that the public sees the process and gets the final say.
Any further discussion? All right, I will do a roll call vote. Jim,
Abstain.
Mike,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion carries. Okay. All right, our last regular item of awarding a vendor for Wellington Fire Department #1's propane supplier for a CIP project to replace the oil tank at Station 13 with a propane tank. So you have before you, hot off the presses this afternoon, some information from the fire department. I know Chief Moore is here to speak to this.
So this project has been ongoing for quite a while. It was a CIP project. I think it started in 2019, 2020. Due to COVID and everything else, and supply issues, we're finally getting ready to replace we need to replace the existing tank with a new tank. The oil tank has to come out of the ground. It's over 20 years old. And our furnace is being converted over to propane, or a new boiler burner is being put into new propane. So we did go out and try to get 3 quotes. We went to AmeriGas, who the tank we currently have tanks from. We've been in trying to constantly contact them with no price from them. We're unable to get a bid back. High Grade and Superior are what you guys have in front of you or for the prices. Superior has been the one that's been out, very energetic to try to get the account. This would be the town purchasing the tank for the station. Currently, we rent it from AmeriGas. And I believe on the top of that message, it says, last time we got a delivery was $6.99 a gallon through AmeriGas. Yeah. So, but we desperately need to get the tank all out. It's up for renewal and we need to not have it renew again.
So High Grade is actually will sell you the tank, so you.
High Grade or Superior will sell us a tank. So
Either of those.
either one
You
will
gotta do
sell us.
that.
Huh?
You have to do. that.
Yes, and that's the plan, is that the town will own the tank so that eventually we can get onto the town's bidding cycle for propane.
Mhm.
Both companies, I think it's on there, they go off the daily market value of what it is for the price, so it's much cheaper than what we were getting from AmeriGas.
So I know we've discussed, and we sat down with our business manager to discuss some of my concerns, right? And is that the town, I think it's important to note that this project is coming from the fire department, but the town will now own the tank.
Because it's a LoSiP project. and-
Correct.
Yeah.
And so it's the town. Now, the town has a contract for propane. When we entered into that contract, it was for very specific propane to specific locations. The fire department was not one of them because they did not have propane tank. So that would be changing in our next go round, which would be soon because we begin those July 1, their annual contracts. But correct me if I'm wrong, Superior wants you to enter into at least a 1-year contract, which
Right,
means
they
you
will
could
not.
not get in on the town's contract. I don't know how you catch up to the town's contract.
I think on there, I believe, so the problem we're going to have is we're not gonna know exactly how much propane we're gonna use. So when you guys go out to bid, we're not even gonna be able to give you a number for a year without knowing how much, we have no idea how much we're gonna burn, because trying to calculate how much oil we use compared to propane, we have no idea. It varies depending if the generator runs and how much the generator runs. And I think that's what Stuart was explaining in his memo here. It's gonna be a year to 18 months before we have an idea what we're gonna be able to, for an
So
average of what we use.
if you have a year contract with them, then you're at minimum 6 months of us purchasing on our own before you could get back on the town's bid. And so I know I expressed some concerns and we talked with Donna with
Yeah.
those about the fact that we have a contract with a supplier. And whether or not it was in good faith to have a second contract for propane with a different vendor. I know some of the concern from the fire department, I know Stuart's expressing that here is high grade. The cost is negligible, right? 7167
Yeah.
and $6,900. So the cost is well within the budgeted amount they had. But high grade is saying within 4 weeks. Superior is saying within 4 days. But I can't not keep thinking about the issue of contracting. And so we're going to be going out to bid for a contract that can't include yours. The town's can't have two contracts at the same time for propane in one area, and that's what I'm struggling with.
So these vendors, the Superior and High Grade, would require you to also be buying the gas from them
At least one,
for
well,
at
yes.
least 1 year.
First one.
So you can't just say, we'll buy it and we'll pay whatever to get until the contract
No,
renews.
I believe, Stuart, are you on? Somebody, Stuart is at the firehouse.
Unless he's the iPhone.
I believe, and what I'm trying to figure out is the high grade. I know Superior said absolutely that it has to be 1 year for the contract. I believe, I don't know what the high grade, if they'll just do until we can get onto the towns. But then again, how do you quote what we're going to use for propane?
And who is
That's what
the,
I'm trying to.
Right.
so High Grade is also the contractor to the town,
Currently.
Currently, correct. And that's
Last
where-
year it was Superior.
right? So High Grade would have the contract, already has the contract with the town, and then if you happen to buy the tank from High Grade, they would have another contract with you.
Nope, it would be with the town.
We the town.
I'm sorry, but they would have a separate
Correct,
contract for
separate
your tank.
contract for
Yeah.
our tank. Until we can get to the point where we can merge onto the towns.
So you would think in that case, they would be willing to talk about merging them at the next renewal for the town, since they have both sides of the business.
And I think I went back to Alex and asked him if any of these folks would consider a 6-month
Right.
contract,
And
and
I
was
know
no one
Superior
willing.
would not.
Superior would not, right? Superior wants the business. I will say they typically bid on our propane
Yep.
contract, and have won before. We really, in the last couple of years, we've had, no issue with either Superior or High Grade. It became a matter of price.
When does the town's contract with High Grade renew? Is it this July 1?
Yes, annually on July 1. So they would enter now.
Can this project delay long enough to actually be
No.
turned on July 1? No.
They need to get out of this tank.
Yeah, we gotta stop using the tank that we have currently, the oil tank. We have to pull the propane. We have to get the tank out of there in the next 30 days. The oil tank, or not, I'm sorry, the propane tank, otherwise I'll renew.
Oh, because you have a renewal problem there.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we have a renewal problem that we're trying to not have to pay a renewal on a tank to rent from Americans. And don't wanna fill it at the prices that, of course, we're, with the storm, with the running, we're under 30%, so. If we have to fill it, we will, we're just trying not to.
So they're just gonna have to contract at least 1 year, and then we're gonna have to catch it next year.
Well, then I think they're going to have to be off contract for 6 months. Now, you own the tank. The town will own the tank, right? So we will no longer fall into this AmeriGas where it's their tank. It will be the town's tank.
Right.
So you
have
can
whoever you
shop
want fill it.
Right.
whoever you want, fill it. It's just, I'm really struggling with the
You think High
town
Grade would
signing.
wanna make this work,
Right,
because they're just gonna end up selling more gas.
right. And,
And I think at this point.
do you know what the 4 weeks that, because did they think? it
I
could-
don't.
You don't know, because it was Stuart who was dealing with it.
And you're not talking a lot of, we're talking $200.
Right, so,
Twisted over.
so for me, it's simple enough. It's a matter of,
Yeah, you have a chance
Contract.
of-
And we still,
I don't love us
It comes down
having
to
two contracts out there for propane suppliers. I think it's
we still have to do the
conflict.
some other work, so it's not like this is getting put in tomorrow, so.
So, typically, the due diligence has been done by the groups that bring their vendors to us, and we're, typically, for lack of a better term, reverse stamping them because we support the research and the work they've done to bring us something solid. This is one I struggle with, to say, yes, let's just go with your vendor. And we know, Jim, if you recall from the one at the dog pound and the Public Works Garage, we couldn't use anyone else because we have a contract for propane. So that made the cheaper installer not an option for us, but because they don't own their tanks and they're buying and starting fresh and not in a contract, that they can move forward with multiple options. So I did go back over the contract to see if there was any language about anything other than those very specific named places, and there wasn't.
Right.
So, I still struggle with us being without, or with two vendors for at least the next 6 months. I don't know what it will bring us come July 1, but at least from now forward, the town would be contracting with two different vendors for propane.
They're just quoting you. They said, you'll get a tank and then we'll fill it up with propane.
Yes. But this is the cost to get the tank and install the tank.
And have it filled.
Is this,
Is
this
this including
includes
the
the first bill?
I don't think so.
or
I think
does it?
this is just the
Well,
work.
it has to include enough gas for them to test it. They have to commission it. But that doesn't have to be a
Yeah,
fill.
they can put a few
No.
gallons in the gas.
Right. I'm guessing he's checked.
It's a good
Right,
question.
that's
I'm
what I
trying to
think.
read,
He
I'm trying to
immediately,
read what you guys have.
oh, what we have doesn't say.
It does, yeah, it doesn't, I don't have an answer to that. I know it does include like the monitoring system, so that we'll be able to monitor it.
Okay,
It's
here's,
got all the sendings and the gauges and all that stuff.
let me tell you what other piece of information I think I need before I move forward. Stuart starts by saying we're paying $6.99 a gallon now.
Yep.
You're gonna lock into a contract at what cost? At what price?
So that's if you, in there, it changes its market value. So it's whatever today's rate is minus, we get it at wholesale cost, so it was like $2 and something. Whatever that website is, if you go to that website, it tells you every day. And they will not lock a actual figure, neither company.
So for a year, you're gonna be you're not locked into anything.
That's my assumption.
So is it better to not be locked in for 6 months with no contract? Was high grade going to require you a whole year contract?
I don't know. Is it, it's not on that. The last I knew,
I need
yes.
to know, I feel like in order to make this decision, I need to know that,
Stand by.
because we're in the same boat. If high grade says you have to have a year's contract. Because the reality is, in 6 months, none of these guys are secure with a contract with the town of Willoughby.
So you're rebidding for this July one. anyway.
That's right. So high grade may say a year too, and then,
I'm trying to get that.
okay. And if
I
that-
apologize. I
That's
thought-
okay, no, I appreciate. Until then, while we wait, any other questions? If not, how's your new year?
Okay, so it does not include any propane prices. That's
It
just
does-
pure
it does
tank,
not.
it's regulators
Yeah.
on this.
Installation of the
gauges,
tank.
yeah, Installation of the tank.
Installation of the tank.
And then they'll have to fill,
And they would put like, so
Whatever,
they
little
put
bit.
just enough propane in there to test it.
right, and then you have to
fill.
fill. So I think the reality is they're going to be paying market price regardless, because if they don't
At a
take a
minimum,
contract, they're
yeah.
going to be right. So my question is high grade requiring you to have a contract separate from the contract they have with the town now?
Yeah, because at this point with that fluctuating price thing, the best thing you could do would be just get by with what you can get by for these 6 months until the town rebids it and issues the new July 1 contract. I'm assuming do you have propane down in the village station? And that's on the town's contract? No,
So
you're
the
buying
plan
that,
is- right,
that's
so
also on your,
It's on the AmeriGas, and the plan is that we're going to swap everything out. That was the original plan with this, is everything was gonna get swapped out. but the price.
And AmeriGas
the
won't
price
come
is
up and give you a little fuel up there also,
Right, well, no, the
just to fill
price-
the new tank? No,
No
it's pretty hard to
contract for-
transfer it.
No contract for a year, or they don't want.
No
to-
contract at high
contract.
grade.
They want,
They just
they will
get-
sell us in kind, that market value. From high grade.
So you'd have to pay market value until the rebate.
Until
Right.
rebate.
Which is what you're gonna be doing anyway. At Superior, you're just doing that for a year.
Per year.
This way, you'd only be doing it for
Right.
5 months.
Right, so the original plan was all three, so technically we have three tanks, there's two at the main station, one in the village. All three were supposed to be replaced, because the market value of a tank has tripled.
Yeah.
That's no longer, until we can budget in to get those other two tanks replaced. They're much cheaper to replace those two because they're smaller. But that needs to go through our budget process, that falls outside the scope of what we're doing right now. There's just not enough money.
Good stuff.
Everything is just pricing out. So,
All right, so our choices, as I see them, are to go with high grade at 6167 with no contract. And the ability to add this to the town's bid. 71, yeah. Did I say something else?
You said
71,
61.
7167, or with Superior at 6900.
I think because Superior has a different contractual requirement, that could keep us locking
Less
out of
appealing.
the town bidding. It's less appealing, even though it's a couple $100 cheaper to start.
Yeah,
Troy, do you remember what we're paying currently?
I believe it's either $1.98 or $1.89.
To think that you're locked
think-
into this for even a year and we can save money, I mean, and now we're just gonna
Yeah.
force that direction for 6 months.
and the propane for the next 5 or 6 months, however, will still come off of our oil, what our oil
Right,
bill would be. That's where it would come, that line item. Providing we use it on work with Troy this year.
So our particular purpose tonight
Is-
is to award the
the bid,
bid.
yes.
I'm still inclined to go with high grade, just
Hmm,
with the chance that you can eventually get on a town contract. And save money.
yeah, a lot faster than
Well,
getting
the
on
other
the
one
town
is,
contract with Superior.
Those 1-year contracts, I don't know how you gotta get out of that.
What's a year at that difference cost? I mean, if they're paying, price today is $6.99 a gallon, we're paying
There's
$1.99.
$1.99 a gallon, right.
We take that hit for
$5.
6 months and not a year and 18 months really.
Right.
Because we'd be a year and then you'd have to wait another 6 months
6
off
months to
contract to
go.
get on the towns. So I'm gonna make a motion to approve the vendor for the Wellington Fire Department #1 propane tank placement to high grade gas out of Stafford downstairs.
Okay.
In the amount of $7,167.
Second.
Seconded by Jim. Any further discussion? I don't want it to go without saying, our not taking the recommendation of the fire department in this instance is not typical and not for any other reason than we just think this is in the best financial
Understood.
move for the town. And hope that something doesn't delay this tank and we are making the wrong choice here. But I think from a financial perspective, the ability to potentially save some dollars in the actual fuel cost is what outweighs the couple $100 savings to me, so. Any other comments?
And you're changing your tanks at the worst possible time.
Well, I don't disagree with you. Trust me, I don't
Yeah, right
disagree.
in the middle of the heating season, so.
Oh,
Yeah,
trust me,
I think we just have to just work through this period until
Hopefully high grade
we'll get on
come
the,
through quickly, okay.
on the.
All right, seeing no further discussion, I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I know you have a meeting, so
Can
go
I just
ahead.
ask them one
Yeah,
quick
yeah,
question?
well, yeah.
Sorry, I know the discussion's over, but the tank that's coming out, the installer is gonna remove the old tank also and decommission, or you have to do that
So
separately?
AmeriGas is going to have to remove the propane tank, the old propane tank.
Okay,
The oil tank that's in the ground will actually come out in the spring once everything is done, once the
Okay,
entire.
but they're separate contracts from all of this.
Separate contract
Okay.
from all of them.
And when AmeriGas removes the old tanks, they're gonna pump off what you have and give you a rebate?
Nope, they will not. No company will pump it off and give you a rebate.
Well, that's not true, but
I understand.
no company is willing to apparently, but they will, because the fire marshal can tell them they're not allowed to transport it.
Right, but they're not
First
gonna
of
give you a
all.
rebate for it.
Yeah, they're not going. to
And,
give you a
yeah.
rebate. We tried.
Yes.
Trust me, we've
Okay.
gone round and round.
They're, yeah. Apparently, we're not a big enough customer to get that leverage.
You're probably right, because we had this discussion with the town garage and
Yeah,
the dog pound as well.
they're taking advantage of the fact that we have no choices and we're a small customer.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pluses and minuses of our rural life.
Yes.
All right, that brings us to present to speak. I see some folks left us, but there's still plenty here. If you are present to speak, I ask that you identify yourself for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes. Anyone still in the room? Going once, going twice? No. It's unusual, I'm disappointed. All right. Mr. Tella?
Hey, Nick Tella, 49 Myrtle. I just want to speak my observation of what I see going on here in town. You know, I understand Troy, he's dating your family. Now he gets the job he has and gets every toy he wants. It's kind of unique. Now Mike gets connected. He stands by your family making money off this property, and he gets rewarded by the Board of Selectmen seat. That's kind of funny how that works. And not only does he get rewarded with that, he's going to be overseeing the SBC, to what you said earlier. Just funny to see local politics, the dirty, dirty local politics at play.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else present to speak? All right, I'll let those absurd remarks sit where they are. Good and welfare. I'll start with a happy new year to you all. I hope it was a good one. And mobile food share is here on this Wednesday from 11 to 11:30. It's every other Wednesday. Reminders open to all Wellington residents, as well as all residents of Connecticut. So it's a drive-through. On the weeks that there's not a mobile food share, I think it's important to know the seniors offer bread here for pickup in the same capacity that they get from the Big Y, and that is just to Wellington residents. So if anyone's in need, they can come through every other week. Next week. Continue to support our small businesses and restaurants as you can. The SBC will be holding their next community engagement event again Thursday, January 5th at 5:30. That meeting will be here in the town office building and pizza will be served. The December Troop C report. We had 349 calls to Troop C for service, which included 12 accidents, 13 criminal investigations, 0 burglaries, 1 larceny, 218 non-reportable matters, and 9 arrests. There were a total of 103 total traffic stops that included 3 on-site DUIs, 3 arrests, 0 misdemeanor summons, 51 infractions, 19 written warnings, and 33 verbal warnings. And everyone's favorite reminder, the second installment of real estate property taxes, personal property taxes, and supplemental motor vehicle taxes are coming due. The final date to pay without interest is Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. Once again, I will welcome Mr. McCoo and thank him for his willingness to serve the town of Wellington. Anything for good and welfare, either of you?
Nothing other than I hope the Board of Finance wish them all the luck to select a chair and move forward. We have a budget season starting.
Yes, as a reminder, we have a budget season starting, so our first meeting will be next Monday.
I know.
I believe it's at 5:30, so you'll have a packet here ready for your approval as we begin those discussions and look forward to it.
Tomorrow, right?
We will. I do want to add one additional good and welfare item, and I want to make sure I thank our first responders. This is a time of year which, you know, is positive for most of the holidays and can be difficult for others. And I just want to thank them for all they do. The holidays don't often lead them to be able to stay at home with their families. They're out there no matter the weather, no matter the call, making sure that we have services. So I want to make sure I thank them for all they do. So with that, I will move to adjourn at 7:35.
Second.
Seconded by Mike. This is a non-debatable matter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you all.